Welcome to episode 525 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Hilton, and he's Pablo Woolls-Blanco of BBC Cornwall and the new Mesque Un podcast, reviving the old name of our good friend Rafa Aldamui's old show that was in Spanish, but this one is in English as a weekly compliment to all the English speakers out there. And you know what I always say, there's more than enough room for everybody in this English-speaking Barcelona content. So instead of seeing a competitor, I wanted to have him on the show, let him plug it, let him know that he is more than welcome here in this new space. So welcome not only to the show, Pablo, but in terms of making Barcelona English-speaking content, I'm excited for you.
No, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, obviously, you could frame it as a competitor with what me, John, and Borg are doing, but we just wanted to get started. We did previously the Engine Room podcast. I don't know if anyone saw that, and that was sort of European football. But we thought we were running out of time a bit, and we all love Barcelona, we're all Barca fans, and we often found ourselves in that podcast talking for about half an hour of the hour segment on Barca. So we thought, why not, make it a bit shorter and get an episode out a week where we can just come together on a Sunday night and talk all things Barca. And that's what we went for. So yeah, like you said, Mesco on podcast. If people want to go and find that, that'll be great. Show the support. But yes, again, thank you for having me on. And like you said, BBC Cornwall, of course, I'm here based in the UK too, doing some stuff. So yeah, real pleasure to be on. Thank you very much.
Well, I always let people know a little bit more than I probably should about under the hood stuff, especially with podcasting and stuff like that. And there's good and bad of it. Opening up the hood is that when you talk just about FC Barcelona, as I've been doing for almost a decade, it's a niche, and you have your audience, and you kind of get stuck there. If you want to talk about anything else, people don't listen to you anymore. And so if I tweet about anything that's not Barcelona, people are like, "Well, I don't really care what you have to say because you are who you are." But in the same way, the people that listen to this show and watch my stuff and have been a part of this community, again, it's something that you won't trade for the world. So anyway, people are listening because they want us to talk about FC Barcelona. So we're going to do that here. I know it feels like we just had an international break, but after Athletic Club, Champions League, and Real Madrid, I think it's a great thing that Barca don't have anything midweek right now. That's why you and I are here talking on this Wednesday. So giving the team time to finally train together and work to get everybody back and everything before Real Sociedad on the weekend. So that means we're talking a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of like more grab bag type of show. And I know it was a few days ago, but let's start with Gundogan's comments from after El Clasico. He said that, and I'm not even paraphrasing. It was in English, so there's no translation needed. He said that he, quote, wished the loss hurt his teammates more than it did. He said that, quote, he wanted to see more frustration and more anger and more disappointment from his teammates. And he said that, quote, he didn't come here to Barcelona to lose these types of games. So obviously, those are pretty strong statements from one of your leaders. And I think you're probably going to agree with me here, but it's a far cry from even last season or 2 years ago when they put 16, 17-year-old Pedri out. They're like, hey, can you make this loss make any sense for the media? And it's much different when you have a Champions League winning 33-year-old saying, hey, I don't like that this isn't the worst day of our lives.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think actually it's a sort of thing that I think we all would have loved to have happened after Anfield or after Bayern Munich. I think this is what everyone, I think, was saying at the time. The dressing room's weak. They don't care enough. That team isn't fighting enough. And we all said that with maybe Valverde and Setien's teams towards the end of time. Now with Xavi's team, it's different in a way. It's a very young squad. And maybe Gundogan's come from that Champions League winning team under Pep. He's come into his Barca dressing room. He's just gone to the back of a really frustrating game where, of course, he's scored the opening goal for Barcelona. It's a game I think we all agree Barcelona shouldn't have lost with the position they were in. They did, and we all know Real Madrid can do that. And I actually watched the rest of Gundogan's interview, and he said, in the other bit of it, he said, it's so frustrated because we knew not to let them do that. He said, we spoke about it not to let Real Madrid, stay in the game and pick us off, and it's exactly what we let them do. So that's even more frustrating. But I think from Gundogan's point of view, he's probably come into that dressing room at the end of the game. This is my interpretation of it. And he's probably seen a few players. We don't know names. I think we heard some other reports in the next few days, and maybe there were two players laughing and joking on their phone. We will never know that, you'd imagine, unless he comes out on a podcast in 20 years' time or whatever. But who we may have maybe seen more relaxed, it's just one game, Well, we can still win La Liga. We can still do this. We can still do that. And maybe from where he's come from, he expects that high standard. And to be fair, that is a high standard that there should be at Barcelona. There certainly should be that. There should be an angry dressing room, a disappointed dressing room, a dressing room that's willing to fight and go again next week and make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen many times. But there's the other side of it too, where it's almost 2-3 years ago, like I said, I would have been all behind Gundogan. I would have said, you are absolutely spot on. This dressing room is weak. These players are not fighting. We're not working hard enough. Now, I actually think that this team under Xavi does fight, is what I will say. I actually think we've got the mentality right this time around. I think the team has changed massively. I think Barcelona are on the right track. I think Xavi cares. I can tell the players care. You can see they're frustrated at losing. Look, maybe not enough. There may have been some who, and like I said, we won't know names. Maybe there were some who looked less disappointed than others, and that's frustrated Gundogan. But I actually think this Barcelona team does care. It does have desire. So I don't think it's like a massive issue that he's bringing up, but maybe from him, to be fair, he's come in and he sees things in a different way where he feels, hang on a minute, after a defeat like that, I don't care if you're trying to put things into context and say that, okay, it's just one game or we can still win La Liga. We should still be bloody annoyed right now. And maybe if he saw a few players who weren't thinking the same thing, that's frustrated him. Look, I think it's a healthy thing for him to say. I think the club would agree, the technical staff, the players would agree. And it's good to have a leader like that. Ultimately, it's one of the reasons we bought Gundogan, right? Because we knew he's a leader, he's a winner, he's, captain at City, winning the treble. Brilliant for that, to have a player like that in our ranks. So I think well done to him for saying it. It's good maybe to, kick up a few of the players' arse in a way, maybe just get them fired up. But at the same time, I would say, I wouldn't have said this 3 years ago, but I would say I think Barcelona are on the right track mentality-wise, and that is a team under Xavi that does care.
100%. It's like I always say, like you have to keep multiple things in your brain at the same time, which in this case would be that one, as you said, the team did fight. There's desire. There's a lot more of that than we saw for the last season and a half, right? And not only that, but one of those main reasons is that when people, we're going to talk about ter Stegen in a second here. He's topic number 2. But when we're talking big picture about Xavi and ter Stegen being good enough in big games, and we'll get to those bigger topics. But when we're talking about the likes of big games and big moments and things like that, I think the depth of the squad and the inexperience in these big moments, I think is still holding true. And I think exists. And I think that's kind of to the point of what the German is saying, that we need to be better in these big moments. Like this is a team capable of that. And it's almost like inexperience and team depth finding out that they are good enough for that. Well, team depth is something that you can't replace. It takes January transfer windows and summer transfer windows and money that Barcelona doesn't have to fix that problem. So not to say that that continues to be an excuse, but it's this weird thing where it's like, I don't want to always have that out and say, well, that's why they didn't not win El Clasico because of depth, right? But they could have won El Clasico with 5 or 6 starters missing. That would have potentially happened, and that was close to happening. And you said too, it doesn't really matter about who he was talking about, but it is a more that he's fair to say what he said, and the team is on its way to getting to where it needs to be. But yeah, to be hurt and frustrated. And I will say too, the last thing here is that there, not to make a generalization, but obviously we know that the way that, I've done enough dabbling with both German and Spanish to know that in German, it's just the way of speaking is much more direct, right? And so I think about PK's interview after the Bayern Munich loss, right? And it's just the way that Spanish and Catalan are spoken is much more diplomatic after losses, and it's Sidlow always has these great paraphrases on how it's a little more, I don't know, judicious and diplomatic is the word I'm going to stick with. When you hear these, especially Messi, even too, when Messi would, on the occasion, do an interview if he was disappointed or something, it's always diplomatic, even when his heart is ripped out of his chest after a South American qualifier. But when you have a German then speaking in English, it's going to be direct, it's going to be to the point, and that is just again the nature of language, right? So I don't want to disparage his comments, but I want to say that if Messi had ever learned English and spoken after Liverpool, like I guarantee you would have heard the exact same thing. He would have said, like, we're not happy about this. This is an anger that I'm trying to deal with, and things like that. And they are professionals there. Do you have another word on that? Or do you want to move to ter Stegen?
No, I think you're right. I think, look, just to summarise, I think, you're right. He's upset about the inexperience of the team. We keep seeing it. And yeah, I think it's a good point you make about the German, because they just have a different way of presenting it. Actually, I think we saw a bit of that with the Dutch, actually. I think De Jong is quite frank in his interviews. Ronald Koeman is quite frank in his interviews. I think we actually saw that. So you're definitely right, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that German and ter Stegen, let's talk about another German and the concerns that kind of came up after El Clasico with him. Where on the Jude Bellingham, I wasn't sure where to go with this, and not to make an excuse for ter Stegen either, but I was never a goalkeeper, and I also never played at the highest level. So I was never a goalkeeper. And I think the worst thing to do is speak for goalkeepers. Because I know even when I was in secondary school, right, and right before the college area here in the US, where if you put me in goal still at the age of 17, 18, I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like, this is not a place that is comfortable to me, and I don't know what you're supposed to be doing here. So unless you're a goalkeeper, I think that's the one position which is like, we don't know. But those concerns about ter Stegen, and not even if he's good enough, but if he's the goalkeeper that can rise to the occasion in the highest games. Because the last time he truly did that was like 2015, even in the Champions League. That was the last time when I can admit to people that it was like big moment ter Stegen. But I was looking through my notes here, and this season, unlike last year, like with the Ballon d'Or ceremony, he was sitting there. Of course, the meme of him with Jude Bellingham or whatever, and all that stuff. But with ter Stegen, he was sitting in that seat because he was one of the best. I know he wasn't. They didn't say he was one of the best, but he was one of the best 3 goalkeepers in Europe last season. That's what he was. And this season, to begin the year, he has not been. And that criticism, I think, is fair. Like, again, just looking through my notes here, I have El Clasico. Oh, I just wrote bad or good here. That's a little bit reductive, but you get the point. El Clasico. Could he have saved Bellingham's long-range shot if he went with the other hand? People are questioning that. Maybe. Again, Shakhtar Donetsk. The one goal that was scored, he could have shut down that angle better. Bad. Athletic Club, 45+1, kick save. Keep a game 1-0. Or, sorry, 0-0. Good moment. Porto, foot save on Wendell in the 64th minute before that game was put away. 71st minute with the glove on the dive. Good moment. Granada, Brian Zaragoza, probably beat him on the angle twice. Bad, not good. Mallorca, bad. He was bad with his feet. That was his one stinker this year. Bad with his feet, bad against the counter. Just a bad game. Betis, good. Really good save before halftime. Also a terrific pass that he gets out of the back to create something from the back using his feet. Good there. Same thing against Osasuna. I had both good and bad, where his passing was bad in that game, but his shot stopping was important and good for Barcelona to get a result against Osasuna. And then against Cadiz, who were playing in that, that high line, not high line, but that high press, his composure and he had a long pass that led to the goal that kind of broke the game open for the 2-0 to Ferran Torres from Lewandowski, and that was good with his feet. So there are 2 parts of ter Stegen, right? Shot stopper, is he elite? I don't think anyone would say he is. But as far as all-around goalkeeper, and it's funny that he did this for FC Barcelona too. You saw that thing he did where he answered like athleticism and he went through the goalkeepers. Didn't mention Neuer for a single one, but mentioned himself for like 2 or 3 of them. But anyway, the point is for ter Stegen here, it's like this year has been good and bad. And it's like, is that mean? I don't know. It's so hard to judge goalkeepers. Like, which goalkeepers would be better than him this season? I mean, that's not the question I'm asking you. I'm asking you to comment on this, but it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm actually a big ter Stegen fan. I am. I think I can't look people in the eye and tell them that he hasn't been poor in some big moments for Barcelona, because you can't sit there with a straight face and say it. And that is upsetting in a way. That is a shame. You look at. I'm just thinking actually back now to some of Anfield, even Roma, Bayern Munich again, the Clasico recently. He hasn't covered himself with glory. I think he should have saved that Bellingham shot, by the way, especially a goalkeeper of his caliber. So that's definitely upsetting. But I would say that, in my opinion, last season ter Stegen was the best goalkeeper in Europe. I actually would say that. I think he's a good captain for Barcelona. He's a leader, and I actually think he was probably one of the ones in that dressing room a few years ago. We thought, hang on a minute, there are a few too many passengers here. I think he was actually probably one of the ones that I was still quite a big fan of. I mean, I thought he can carry on to the next generation. He can lead these young players, which he's doing now. So I like his character. I think he's the perfect goalkeeper for Barcelona, actually. You mentioned a few of his errors this season, and he has dropped off this season compared to last season, I would say that. And his big game record is still a problem. I would agree with that. And I suppose that comes into the question, whereas, well, can he be considered the best in the world, and if that keeps happening? My answer would be that I think he is good enough in almost every game to be considered it. But of course, it's a problem for Barcelona to be the captain as well. And I'm not sure if he is the leader we need for this young group of players, but I think he would be one of the ones I would have put forward. So I'm glad that he's got the armband now for almost every game with Sergio Bertolbelli playing. So look, I'm a big ter Stegen fan. I think he is the goalkeeper for Barcelona, but I completely get why people get frustrated and upset with him in big games, because it keeps happening. And on the weekend was the same. Shouldn't have let in that goal against Bellingham for me, and that changes the game. It's too far out. Has to go the other hand. It's one of those where actually it's a rifle from Bellingham, but he could have even got over there quicker and palmed it away. So, it's a really frustrating goal to concede, actually, out of nowhere, really. And when you look at the replay, it looks even worse. In lifetime, I thought, wow.
Yeah,
but then
same.
you think, he could have done better. So I understand the frustration. I think there's been too much frustration. I've seen a lot of abuse for him on social media in the last few days, where I think, wow, after some of the performances he put up last season, by the way, conceding that few goals, I mean, I wouldn't have given him that much stick, but I think it comes from an accumulation of big moments for Barcelona, him slipping up at times, and I understand the frustration. That is still the frustration of the fan base, right? We might be doing well on a week-to-week basis, but a big moment comes up, we can't go down in the Champions League or in Europe or in La Liga, and if he's partly at fault for that, then of course all of the bricks are going to come down on him. So I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking about Xavi and ter Stegen, right, the metaphor I would use is it feels like we're in a dark room and we know that there's a light switch in the room and we got to hit that light switch on. And that's how I feel about ter Stegen and Xavi and about, like, we'll say the timeline that people have for them, where it's like if we can hit that light switch in some undeterminable amount of time, and every individual fan has their own timeline, has their own patience, has their own amount of time before they're saying, I've had enough with this. And that's why we obviously roll our eyes at the people who already with Xavi in 2021 were like, he's never going to, you know what I mean? Like, those are guys you don't listen to because they're not patient enough to wander around in the dark, when Barcelona is building something and doesn't have any money. And obviously, to take this metaphor farther, like, the more money the club has, the easier it is to find the light switch, whatever you want to say. But in the case of ter Stegen and Xavi, it's like, if Barcelona, they don't win the big games and they're not a big game manager or a big game goalkeeper until that light switch is flipped on. But you never know when that's going to happen, right? We're waiting around in the dark. And this season, not saying you don't know, but you don't know. I mean, Barcelona could win the treble. Like, everything is still totally possible this year. And then if Barcelona win the treble, then everyone's going to change their tune. And I think people believe that, I think that is that positive, that unnecessary optimism or pessimism where it's like, obviously there's a lot of people who are like, I don't think we're going to find the light switch this year in those big games. And I think that's a fair belief to have. But again, it's also like, you don't flip that switch until you do. And then if Barcelona did win everything or win not even the Champions League, but if they do win the Liga again and they get to the quarterfinal and semifinal of Champions League and they clearly show that they're building something and they're closer, they're on the right wall, they know the light switch is there, are people still willing to kind of say, yes, ter Stegen is going to be our guy when we finally climb the mountain, and Xavi will be our man when we finally climb that mountain? And those are difficult things to do. And this is a good transition, by the way. I'm pat myself on the back here because we're going to talk about somebody who has not only flipped the switch, but flipped every switch she possibly could in Aitana, because we're going to talk about the Ballon d'Or here with her, because that is exactly the kind of a situation with the Barca Femení, where I was like, I mean, when I saw them in 2019 lose to Lyon, you're like, I mean, Lyon, Wolfsburg, like, they're just so far behind. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, they're all conquering and an all-time women's side. I mean, now it's Lyon, then Barcelona. Like, they have surpassed Wolfsburg and any other team in women's history that has tried to be there. I mean, it is now Lyon and their dynasty and then FC Barcelona.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, and what the Femení have done has been great. And you're right about that. I mean, even recently, I think even after they'd won one, as it all got to the final of one, they lost again. I believe was it 3-1 in the final. But then Chelsea. And now that they are the team for me in women's football, and we see what Aitana's doing. She's almost overtaken Alexia. I know with injuries and whatnot for Alexia, but she's sort of become like the best, right? And you could see her growing up through the ranks too. But it does link to the men's team in that way, where it's like, well, can Barcelona flip it? And with Champions League, actually, Champions League is a very interesting competition where you almost don't need to play your best football in it, so it can sort of just switch in a way, and all of a sudden you're in the semi-finals and you're building something, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're the best team in your country by any stretch of the imagination. But it means that you're close. I remember Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea, Manchester City were by far the best team in England that year. But Tuchel's Chelsea just built something in the Champions League. They just became that hard to beat, and they won the trophy deservedly in the end. They just cruised past everyone almost. So that can happen in Champions League football. I think Barcelona are the sort of team that probably would need to play really well as win it. But still, that could happen in the next years. And I think, of course, this year everyone's looking at the Champions League. We can't get away from that. But we've got the easy group, if you like. We're in a comfortable spot in it. We have to go through. We will be winning that group, unless a disaster happens, really. And then it comes to the round of 16, the quarterfinals. Well, can Barcelona go away to a ground and compete? Can Xavi turn up in a big game? And when it's going gets tough, we go 1-0 down, we go 2-1 down. Can we still go through them at the best teams in the world, like Real Madrid would? That's when the question marks come. So we're still waiting to see that. And of course, the more it keeps happening, the more we keep failing. I understand the question marks are coming up, but I will say that the place we're in now compared to where we were a few years ago, and we were just looking at, we were only heading in one direction. I think the revolution's been brilliant. I really do. I take my hat off to all of them. Xavi, Laporta, the players, that they got it the signing spot on. Barcelona are in a much better spot. But they have to compete in the Champions League. They have to prove it in Europe in the toughest moments. When the going gets tough, they have to show that grit that the best teams in the world do. It can't always be plain sailing for us to go through. So, of course, all the fans are waiting to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it is where I get a little bit apologetic about how I said against Athletic Club, like they didn't play their best and they got the 3 points, and I'm fine with that. Like I can live with that, right? And it is one thing to play not your best and get 3 points against even Athletic Club or Cadiz or whoever it may be, and a point against Osasuna or whatever, and not play your best. But it's another thing to not play your best and then, as you said, still make the quarterfinal, still make the semifinal, right? And we have not seen Barcelona not play their best and make that next round for a long, long time. I think the last time I want to say they did that was it 2019, I think, in that run against Lyon, where like they were better than Lyon, but like they weren't like that much better than Lyon. Like they were good enough and they got past them and they're like, okay, well, Barcelona on paper were the far superior team. All right, so I do want to go on this little Aitana thing here. I want to give credit not only to her, but kind of say how if you're a fan of the Femini and then you look at the men's team, I understand some of your disappointment, but I kind of get to know Aitana here. I was reading quite a bit about her after this Ballon d'Or win, and it's even more incredible because we're gonna do Messi next, so hold the horse on that. But there's always a debate about the men's Ballon d'Or, and with the women's Ballon d'Or this season, there was a 0% chance that Aitana Bonmati was not the best player in the world, to the point where I wonder if this season that she just had can be replicated. 18 goals, 21 assists in 37 games for Barca, 3 goals and 2 assists and the Golden Ball in the World Cup. She's the first footballer to win the World Cup, the Champions League, and the Ballon d'Or in the same year. And it is one thing to win everything. It's another thing to do it as the best player on the field. I mean, when we just talk about big games of the men's team, there is not a single big game that Aitana Bonmati has not showed up in since, as you said, that Lyon loss 3-1 last season, which she also said is the reason why Barca went out and killed everybody for that Champions or destroyed everyone to get to the Champions League because of that loss. She also helped to get Rubiales and his cronies removed, just perfectly executed that, said, hey, we're going to strike. And so we're going to let you know that we hate this. And then we're going to come to the World Cup anyway, win the whole dang thing, and then use that as grounds to get this obscenity out of our lives. And the joy she also brings me just when I watch her play too is like I get the same feelings from her that I got from Iniesta, but almost an alpha version of him, because with Messi and Xavi around, Iniesta was never the guy the way that Aitana is when she is on the field. Like she is the person on the field, but the way that they affect the game, even in their excellence and joy, is similar. Like it's not just like they were fun players. It's just like they're excellent, incredible in every way, controlling a game, but also again they bring such joy with the ball at their feet and technical ability and all that stuff. And the three things I want to add about her too is the fact that Barcelona should, as they are rightly doing, the idea of Messi of club, as you're naming your podcast after, but the idea of Messi club, Aitana Bonmati, like for all of the corruption and issues in football and Negrera and all that bad PR, you push Aitana Bonmati to the moon in terms of saying she is the person that represents Barcelona more than any other that I'd heard. I saw another story about from the Players Tribune article that Aitana dictated before the World Cup. So I don't know if people knew this because I didn't know this. She wanted to leave Barcelona because while playing for the U15, she just couldn't see how you could make a living playing football in Spain as a woman, which is true. So she started considering with her parents going to the University of Oregon here in the U.S. to get an education abroad. But then 3 years later, while playing for the second team, the first team then became professional in 2017, and the following year she was promoted. So in 2 years, she went from potentially going to school in the U.S. to becoming a full-time professional at Barcelona. And then years on after that, of course, she's winning the Ballon d'Or, standing with Messi, and is considered the best player in the world. And there's other little stories too about like when you talk about her values and how Barcelona is a Catalan club and represents those values. So both her parents are retired, but they're retired teachers who spoke Catalan and taught Catalan. So she took her mother's first name, Bonmati, which wasn't allowed in Spain until 2000, 2 years after Aitana was born. And it was a rule that her parents were a part of fighting for and getting across the line in Spain. Like her parents were part of that women's rights effort. And then she herself, with all her humanitarian efforts, last year, she began working with the UN Refugee Agency in Spain. They arranged football training in Barcelona for female refugees to give them a support network and help them meet people and help them get integrated into culture as a refugee. So she says, and I quote, "It's not going to fix the world, but I already think has improved quite a few lives." And again, those are the values. Like, that is the person that is supposed to represent FC Barcelona. Like, 'cause it is about masculine club, and I think we do roll our eyes a little bit about that with looking at where and the ways of which the men's team kind of just they are whoever they need to be, right? They say whatever they need to for whoever they need to say with whatever money that they were given to say that thing. But Aitana Bonmati, she was semi-professional, and this wasn't supposed to happen with the women's game, and it's exploded. And so she's still in a position where she's speaking from like, hey, there are things I don't like here, and I'm letting you know about those things. Like, you're not just propping me up for money because I'm not getting that money. I'm kind of, she's independent to speak for her values and stand up for herself. And I think that part of it is so incredible to me. I know I went on a long diatribe there about Aitana Bonmati, but she deserved the Ballon d'Or for her work on the field, and it could not happen to have happened to a better footballer off the field.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually remember when Aitana was sort of like gaining her starting berth about 3-4 years ago now. Actually, I remember she used to come off the bench in quite a few Femini games I was watching around 2019, and I always thought that's a special player coming in there. I think they should start Aitana more. I remember dropping her follow on Instagram and Twitter. I thought I'm going to follow Aitana a bit because I think Aitana could be the one actually for Barca Femini, and she just rose up through the ranks. She really has, and what she's doing on the pitch has been superb. You're right about Iniesta. And I mean, I know Xavi's spoken incredibly highly of her before as well. And you're also right about her being a good ambassador for the club. I mean, I think it's great now with what Barca do with the Femini team, as they should with how much success they've had in getting players like Alexia on the front of the Camp Nou. And I think there's on the last Camp Nou, the Spotify one, there were 3 men's players, 3 women's players. I think Mapi Leon was on there as well, maybe Sandra Panos as well. And so, they do it 3 and 3 in a way. And I think it's good to promote with how well we're doing, especially with the women's team. And you're right about her being the best player. I mean, the other one I would have said Sam Kerr, I think, was superb for Chelsea. Australia is a really, really talented player, by the way. Very good, very cool finisher. But Aitana's been absolutely superb. And you're right about everything she's done off the field as well. The World Cup is massive, I think, for Spain as a nation, actually, to go and win at the team after everything that happened was one of the stories, actually, I think, of the year in football. And actually, I'm almost a bit upset with the way it was covered because, in my opinion, they covered it far too much from a point of view of talking about the Rubiales scandal. And I don't know if that's because of my country, England. They're just poor at covering that thing. It's potentially because they were beaten in the final. Honestly, it is.
It's a little bit. It's a little bit.
That Spain, with everything that happened, with that leaving over. By the way, there are already problems with Jorge Vilda. Of course, the case hadn't happened yet until they won, obviously, on the podium. With Jorge Vilda and all the players striking to come together and win that tournament, beat England, who everyone thought were going to win. It's incredible. And then for all of that to happen and what they've done off the pitch as well. So what a story for it to only largely be covered in the fact that this bloke kissed one of the players on the podium is, not great in my opinion, but maybe that's because they lost. I honestly think it is. But there you have it. That's a separate issue, I suppose. But what Aitana's done has been superb. She really has grown through the ranks in Barcelona, especially with Alexia's injury too. I think she's just taken the baton, if you like, and really driven that team forward. So, hats off to her. She's been absolutely superb, and as with the Femini team. So, hopefully they go on again this season and do it all.
Yeah, I agree. All that, of course. Salma also finished third, just 19 years old, finished third in the Ballon d'Or, turns 20 in 2 weeks. The sky is certainly the limit for her. And then Patri got 8th. Patri would have finished on the podium if she had gone to the World Cup, by the way. Like, if she had won a World Cup, but her and Mappy Leon, you want to talk about values, they stuck to their guns, stuck to their values. And so Patri finished 8th and refused to go to the World Cup. So credit to her. And then the other side, Messi's Ballon d'Or, it's this weird thing, Pablo. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about it. Like, he won the World Cup, and with Argentina, and he was going to win the Ballon d'Or. Like, again, like, you go back through history, and it's like how many times, whether it's Zidane or Modric or I'm going to plug here the Ballon d'Or video I just did last Monday that's still on the YouTube channel. I go through it. There's 6 Ballon d'Ors where I say, hey, were they the best player in Europe at the time? And obviously, until 1995 or what it was, 1994, you could not be from South America and win it. So, like, the year that Stoichkov won for what he did for Bulgaria as well as for Barcelona, people argued that, well, it was Brazil's Romario, who was also a Barcelona teammate, that probably deserved that award. So, I mean, you're disqualifying Pelé and Maradona for a lot of time. So it's like the Ballon d'Or, yeah, you start to roll your eyes about it. But even throughout its entire history, even though with the European, when it was just the European players, there are times, I was it 1960, one of them, like 68 or something, that somebody from Czechoslovakia at the time, but the Czech Republic had won. And then I had to go back and look at, his, or 1962. You get my point. I'm getting lost here. Watch the video. You'll get it straight. I have it all there. But the point is, there's a number of times where I go, were they the best player? Probably not. But then I look at European competition, international competition, and go, okay, well, that's where that word came from. And sure, there are times where Messi won the Ballon d'Or because of his Barcelona stuff. And then there are other times when he won it for, a 1 month long tournament, and that being in Argentina winning the World Cup. You could argue that this is maybe the first time he actually did win it based on his international career and not on the back of his club career. Like, this is the first time he's actually done that. And yeah, I mean, again, that's all I have to say. It's just like, was Holland the best player over 12 months? I mean, maybe, but he's also part of the best team. Like, I don't know, like, that's a best team award for them, sure. And Holland does something really, really well. But I thought Messi, over the course of a season, the highest level that anybody reached this year was clearly Lionel Messi. That's number 8.
Yeah. I mean, the Ballon d'Or, I think what people have to realise, and when you can look through the rankings every year, and you can figure out that those players in order, they aren't the best players in Europe. That's it's quite clear that obviously there's certain players in there. I don't think you can call Julian Alvarez one of the top 10, 15 players, and Yassine Bono, Emi Martinez. For me, neither of those were better than ter Stegen last season, for example. The Ballon d'Or is based on what was the biggest tournament that year. That's just the way it's done. That's the way it was always done. It's why Modric won it in 2018 and we had all the French guys there. It's why it will always be that way. People just simply have to recognise that, and that's the way it's handed out. So I think we all knew, you're right, once Messi won the World Cup with Argentina, it was only going one way. It's funny because I probably thought once he'd gone to PSG and after his 2019 Ballon d'Or that was that for Messi. I didn't think he'd win another one. But to win another one, is he 36 now, is incredible. Ahead of Haaland and Mbappe as well, by the way. Was he the best footballer in Europe this season? Or this year? I would potentially say, because I'm a bit of a believer that when Messi plays football, there's no one better, in all truth. And I look back at the Ballon d'Ors that Ronaldo and Modric won, and 2018, for example, Messi was sensational. So what? Because he went out in the round of 16 in the World Cup with a poor Argentina team, it means he's not worthy of the Ballon d'Or? I've never agreed with that. I never ever agree with that, and I just know that's the way it's done. For me, the Ballon d'Or should be who was the best player over the course of the season, and for me, that's why Messi should have over 10 by now, because you can't look at me with a straight face and say that Messi wasn't the best player for almost every year since 2009, really, because he simply was. There's no one close to him, in my opinion. So we know that's the way the Ballon d'Or's won. For Messi to go and do it now, though, is really nice, and just to see him on the podium again at that age, of course, that'll be that for him. You'd think anyway, unless he keeps going. But I think he should tie up. I really do, and I actually almost hope he doesn't keep going, because it would be a bit of a shame if after all of this he then tries the 2024 Copa America with Argentina. They go out at the quarterfinals on penalties to Paraguay or something, and people are thinking, oh well, that's not quite the fairy tale ending that we had in Qatar, but okay. So I would actually like if he tied it up now. But you think that'll be that for him to get 8 Ballon d'Ors, and his humility. I mean, I think they put a little clip on at the ceremony. What he's done for football, for us Barcelona fans, of course, it's nostalgic. Just the joy to be able to watch Messi on a week-to-week basis was just ridiculous. This season, of course, we saw less of him because he was at PSG and Miami and whatnot. But we all saw the way he performed in the World Cup, and again, that is the best player in the world. You see when he plays at the World Cup, there's no one close to him. He is just that good. So really happy for him, and it was a nice moment. He's got so much humility as well, by the way. And I think I saw Ronaldo on social media in the last few days, and I have to mention it. I've always had a lot of admiration for Ronaldo. In fact, I think when I was younger, I was Team Messi, so I hated Ronaldo a bit more. But as I grew older, I thought, what a great athlete. That drive, that ambition, that Ronaldo had. I really respect it, and I still do for what he's done. I think he is an incredible footballer. He's done an unbelievable amount of things. I never think he was close to Messi. I have to say that. People disagree with that. In my opinion, I don't think he was close to Messi as a footballer ever. But his response, I mean, now he's out in Saudi Arabia, after those seasons he had at Manchester United. And I mean, the way he's commenting on the Instagram posts, I saw the way he was behaving, because there were the El Atifak fans were chanting Messi at him, and he was telling them to, I don't even know if I can swear on this, he was telling them to F off, and, kids in the crowd chanting at him, and he was getting really balled up, and he was telling them to sub the referee off, and he really does, and he's done it a few times. I think the only error he's made is he's based his career too much on being better than Lionel Messi instead of just focusing on himself. He was always obsessed with that. He's made some snarky comments in the past that you just think, that puts you down a few pegs actually in a few people's estimations. Those are a bit sour. They're a little bit salty for a player of your caliber who claims they have so much self belief. I think he's done a few too many comments where you think, oh, that's a bit ugly. That's childish. So I think that's just a stare on him really more than anything. But thought I'd add that. But on Messi, so happy for him. Always a joy to watch, and what a way to end a career.
It's funny because we talk about legacy like beyond this, right? And what players do in their twilight of their careers. It's weird because like it's sometimes it does affect the way we remember these players and it does shape them. And I'm a big basketball fan, and people always know in this podcast. And so like my best example for that was like Shaquille O'Neal. Like Shaquille O'Neal played for the Magic as a young player, then the Lakers and the Heat, and it felt like his legacy was defined. Like Shaq is one of the top probably 10, 12 players in NBA history. And is he a top 3 center with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain at that, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, so top 4, whatever it is? Like, where does he fit and all that stuff? Most dominant big man of all time, like in basketball. But yeah, when he went on that like 5-year retirement tour where he did like 1 year as he got slower and the game was changing around him. And like, I think that did affect as social media and like Twitter. And it just was like a terrible time for him to slow down. So like the first thing that people remembered was like him slowing down. And that almost like makes you forget like what he was. And I think with Messi in the US, to your point, like he's kind of putting American or American soccer on his back in a way that's trying to propel that forward. So like, I mean, I could tell you like with Major League Soccer, Inter Miami was terrible before he showed up, but then missing the playoffs was, I mean, when I say cataclysmic, I mean cataclysmic for like at least dialogue, not for like the money and all the things in the league, but it was like cataclysmic for the way that MLS mattered for a moment, and now it doesn't again. And the playoffs are happening, and nobody seems to like. It's not in the zeitgeist right now, which is just like horrifying because it's just like he's really as the U.S. and Mexico and Canada have the World Cup, he's going to trying to propel that forward, that on his back in a way that I think to Cristiano Ronaldo's credit is trying to do in Saudi Arabia as well. And Xavi was attempting to do in Qatar, and Iniesta went to Japan. For a little while though too. He was like 33, 34 when he left. Like Iniesta left earlier than or 34, whenever he left. But to legacy, that's interesting because like the example I always say, and I have this on the YouTube channel as well. Johan Cruyff, when you talk about like the if you remember the joke about the pig farming, like he lost a ton of money. Like his career, he was like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. But then he lost all of his money in a pig farming thing, and he goes, wait a second, I can't retire, I need money. And so he goes back and plays, and like there is no one in professional football who kind of limps their way to the end until he goes back to Ajax as pretty much a semi-retired player, and then they don't give him another contract, so he goes to Feyenoord and wins the league. And it's just like, so Johan Cruyff has like the best, like, as you said, like, there's so much spite in it, and with all those good players, they don't really know when their time is done. Like they just don't know. And so I think Messi, with the thing with Inter Miami, and I think there is going to be a soft landing to his domestic career, of course. And I think we're going to be able to remember him as a kind of, like he's going to be on top until he's 38, until he says, yeah, okay, I guess I'm done now, and all that stuff. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum here. No real comment. I just want a little, almost a PSA. The best young players for Barca you've heard me talking about. I don't get to, well, I'll talk about them at the U17 World Cup in Indonesia. Noah Darvic, who started slowly at Barca Athletic, albeit as a 16-year-old, one of the youngest players on the field every time. He will be there with Germany. And then Spain is setting a whole contingent of Marc Guiu, Juan Fernandez, Guillem Jeanette, Marc Bernal, Pau Prim, Hector Fort, and Pau Kubarsi. So the players that the players I keep telling you about, those are the players that are going to the U17 World Cup, rightly so. And I think with that talent, that in that Barcelona contingent, Spain should be on paper one of the favorites for this tournament. So I think anything U17 is weird though, because things happen. Like they could literally wake up and they all have the sniffles, and then they lose a game in the quarterfinal to who knows. Like U17 World Cup, like you don't say that matters. I mean, how many has Mexico won or gotten far to, or how many had Argentina up to that point, right? And then they weren't able to capitalize on it, and these things happen. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll try to watch as much as I can of that and give you updates. But next thing now for you, Pablo, Joao Felix. At this point, I was kind of putting off this referendum, and I think because we have like this week-long break, it's a good time to do this. We're in November, start of November, November 1st today. Would you look to invest in Joao Felix at this stage of his loan?
I never thought I'd say this, but yes. Honestly, Dan, I really wasn't a Joao Felix fan. I just thought he's not a Barcelona player. I didn't rate his attitude, and actually, I thought people only talked about his attitude and didn't talk about enough the fact that he didn't do enough on the pitch either. Having said that, I think he's been brilliant for Barcelona. I'd put Cancelo in there too, by the way, as well. But I think Felix is.
I was going to ask about him next, but
I wonder whether you would, so I just paused. I think Felix has elevated Barcelona's attack to another level. I really do. I think he's given us the player on the left that we've been looking for. He links up fantastically with Lewandowski. He's scoring goals. He's creating chances. When he gets the ball, I just feel like something's going to happen. I think I said it on Twitter after the Athletic Bilbao game. Of course, we were missing so many players. It was a makeshift Barcelona team, if you like. We were, as you know, with so many injuries, just a bit flat out on our feet up there. But that was the sort of game where I feel like we just got the ball to Joao and he was just making everything happen. It's like it reminded me of one of those performances the Neymar used to have when Messi was out injured, where we thought, in 2015-16, where it was like, get the ball to him and he's going to make things happen. I think he got the assist for the dual goal, didn't he, as well? So I've actually been really impressed with Felix, a player that, like I said, I wasn't that big of a fan of attitude-wise. I didn't hear good things. And actually, performance-wise, I just thought, how much do you actually bring? And maybe that will still come true come the end of the season. Maybe this was a purple patch for it, because, again, I will say, didn't do much in the Clásico. Was pretty ineffective, in my opinion. Really barely touched the ball. So, maybe it will still come the end of the season. He's only got 5 goals, 7 assists, and we think, for how much Atletico will ask, really? So that will still be a question for us. But at the moment, if you said, would you want to keep Felix next season? I would, because I don't think we've got another player like him in the squad. And I think he's elevating our attack to a new level. I didn't know how much football he'd play, but I think his attitude is really good. He's got desire in his game, hunger, winning the ball back. It looks really good for Barcelona. I've been super impressed. I have.
Yeah, there's that meme, that Kermit the Frog meme with the hood, where he has a black, right? And you say the thing, your inner self is saying that thing. I'm about to do that to myself because I'm so long have been a fan of Ansu Fati. I will refuse to sell my Ansu Fati stock. I refuse. I'm holding on to it forever. You can't take it off of me. However, there is that hooded Kermit the Frog inside of me that's saying, what is Barcelona's next season best option on the left wing? What is possible for them? Who is their best player there? Lamine Yamal is right-footed, and Rafinha can only play on the right. Ferran Torres does not succeed on the left wing, and Vitor Roque, who's coming in, he, whether it's January or the summertime, he can play off of that, but he's not. Like, he is a number 9. It's not like when 16-year-old Ansu Fati, you're saying, well, eventually he might be a number 9, but right now he's a left winger. That's before injuries, of course. But no, Vitor Roque is an 18-year-old number 9. Like, that is what he is. That's where he's most comfortable. So Vitor Roque doesn't really solve your problem in the left wing either. And then the question would be, would Xavi go back to that box midfield to have Pedri and Gundogan up top and Gabi and De Jong all on the field together? Because I think we're going to find out for the rest of this season, that actually says a lot about Gabi. And in 2 months, all of what can change, where I know people say we don't want to lose what Gabi provides upfield, but the way he's affected this game from deeper positions, if Pedri and Gundogan are now in front of him and De Jong is next to him, why not? Why can't Gabi just play in a deeper position and double pivot and you play in that box midfield? Like, it creates more problems because Barcelona overall under Xavi has been better with a left winger, regardless. Like, no matter what. Like, even though you say, is Joao Felix better than Pedri? No. Like, no. He's like, no, Pedri's a better player than Joao Felix. But when I say about the hood thing, I go back to it that when I say who's on that left wing, is 25-year-old Ansu Fati better than 25-year-old Joao Felix? Like, who has a higher ceiling? And I always said it was Ansu Fati, but I agree with you. I was worried about Joao Felix and his attitude and like what kind of player he is, where he fits, and just how he felt like he was, not to say unnecessary, but he had a lot of tricks in his boots, but not a lot of purpose. And he's kind of proved me wrong that he does have purpose and he does make sense. And I think there's a part of me that's saying, I think 25-year-old Joao Felix in 2 years' time, he's 23 or whatever right now. So 2 years' time, 25-year-old Joao Felix is better than 25-year-old Ansu Fati is my great fear, obviously. But I think that what might be true. So if you can sell, and then that's where the number comes into play. If you sell Ansu Fati for 30 to 40 million, and Atletico Madrid is asking 50 million for Joao Felix next summer, and Barca do have the money to do it because they have a lot of other issues too. But you're also looking around the rest of it, right? I mean, building a squad is tough, but have Barcelona invested in youth in a way that they've set themselves up for success? Because if you do find a way to get Cancelo for 20 mil or whatever it is over the summer as well, and now you're looking around and saying, as I've said many times before, like, I know that Ora Romeu isn't the answer, but if you're double pivot is De Jong and Gavi even for next season, and you solidified that this year. And then Mark Bernal at 17 is like, well, actually, we can put him on the bench sometimes. Like, this kid might be good. I'm not saying he's good enough, but I'm saying is like, what if he is good enough? What if him or Pau Priem or Mark Casado or whatever is good enough to be your backup along with another year of Order Romeu? And then at right back, you're going, well, Jun Araujo is having a great loan so far at Las Palmas. And what if he does have a great loan at Las Palmas and is ready to be your backup? And if he's not, then Hector Fort might be at 18, ready to get some minutes, right? And now you're like, well, maybe your depth is actually much better next season than it was even this year, and you're not worrying about that because the academy is working in conjunction with the finances. So I don't know, like if you have 20 mil to spare, maybe having a left winger and bringing in a left winger who's been successful might not be the worst idea. And again, just like you, I cannot believe I'm saying that 2 months in with Joao Felix when you're right. He's not scoring goals, but I've said with Joao Felix and Cancelo, they look tired right now to me. Like they've played 2 minutes since they arrived. Like I want them to take a break. Like this week, I expect Joao Felix, like hot take, because we also see that our last thing to do. Hot take for us, see that. I do think Joao Felix is going to come out firing. I think he's going to have a really good match because the first week that he has had a week-long break where he hasn't traveled for international duty or had double matches since he arrived at FC Barcelona.
Yeah. Honestly, I think he's been quality. I just say he's one of those players who, when he gets the ball, I'm thinking something's going to happen here. So I think you're right. Really big game for Barca, as you said. We'll get onto it in a moment. But we need him to have a big performance. We need to have a big performance ourselves. It's a must-win game already. Ansu Fati, I mean, God, everyone wants him to do well. I just think when you get loaned out from Barcelona, I don't know if you ever come back. It's one of those things. A loan from Barcelona is not a loan like any other club, in my opinion. It just means we almost want to ship you off, and especially with the way Joao Felix is performing. They both got the same agent. Like you said, I can see Ansel being sold for 30, 40 million this summer, and if Barca can get a good premium on Felix, I think they do it. If he keeps up this form, he has to keep it up, and then we keep going. But you're right. I actually think we've got depth. Of course, we need to sort the pivot position. That is a position of genuine worry. I actually agree with that. Romeu, I thought would actually be a good stopgap. Maybe he still will be for some moments, but maybe it's learning when to use him and when not to. We're probably getting a harsh reality of that quite early on, aren't we? Only at November. So we'll see how he does in the remainder of the seasons. But La Masia is such a good place to get talent through, of course, as we know. It just provides constantly, and they always fit the Barcelona mould perfectly that new signings maybe can't. So I'm sure that's something Xavi will keep looking at in the next few years. But yeah, at the moment, Felix and Cancelo for me have really been good, even better than I thought. I knew Cancelo would be good because he's a quality player, and I always thought he's a right back for Barcelona. So to be able to get him was brilliant. He's proving himself too. But Felix is the one I think who's surprising everyone. So I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, as I said, when you talk about the depth and stuff, I can say doing this 7-8 years, like I would never have been really been watching the U17 World Cup. Like I would have been following along on social media or or seeing the highlights or like, hey, check in on the Barca kids. Did they play 90 minutes? Did they see the field? Like where are they playing? But now I'm like going to be looking for watching the U17 World Cup because these are all kids that I mean, some of them have already been on the bench with and Mark Gu are like already won 3 points for Barcelona. So it's like these U17 players are now already for FC Barcelona. So it's like, well, I actually have to watch these on the fringe of the first team players, like, again, including Mark Bernal, who's just like the starter. Like he's a consummate starter for Barca Athletic. And one of Rafa Marquez, like, again, it wasn't examples. It was like, oh, the surprise kid, the 16-year-old who was with the Cadet Oz U16s last year is now playing with Rafa Marquez. Like, what kind of role do you have? How many minutes will he play? He's locked in 10 in the starting lineup, and he's been one of the best players this year. It's the same thing with Kubarsi. Like every time he's on the field for Barca Athletic, him and Mikhail Faye, like who I was worried about acclimating and coming in, and I'm watching Barca Athletic. I'm like, they're good. Like those are the players. Like those are the ones who stand out. And no offense to some of the other guys, like Moya, the guys who were brought in to kind of be supplemental, but the supplemental players are supplemental, and the teenagers are the best players for Barca Athletic. And I don't care about results. Like this time around, Barca Athletic, there were other times when I guess, oh yeah, I mean, if they were in the second division, that'd be more experience. These kids are getting the experience they need, and they're going to be ready to contribute right away. Now, again, they're all away, so they're going to be gone from Real Sociedad, which are last thing to talk about. And I was looking at this, I as much as I was happy about the 3 points against Athletic Club, and as much as I was trying to mitigate the frustration about El Clasico, Real Sociedad is now a must win. Real Madrid and Girona are 4 points ahead, and Atleti is 1 point ahead with a game in hand, and on the longest winning streak in the league at 6 games right now. Real Sociedad sits in 5th with 19 points. Frankie de Jong and Pedri will both be able to play, but in the best case scenario, they will only be able to play 20 to 25 minutes, and if Barca's up big, they probably won't see the field at all, except for maybe the final 5-10 minutes to put their cleats on. So it is kind of frustrating because I feel like Barcelona, they picked up their first loss. They took their first loss of the season on the weekend to Real Madrid. But yet, one weekend later, if you go down 7 points in November, it's like it's not impossible, but 7 is a lot different than 4. And so Real Sociedad becomes must win. I mean, even 6 is a lot more than 4 when it comes to the Liga table because that's multiple results against your rivals. That's hard to do.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I actually think we were in a similar sort of spot last season. We lost the Clásico 3-1 in the Bernabeu, and then I think our next two games, I'm not sure the order, it was Athletic Club and Villarreal. Were on both at the Camp Nou. We won both. I think it was 3-0 and 4-0. And I remember going into those games thinking, if we draw and lose this, La Liga's done. But we dealt with them really well. We got 6 massive points there, and then you start turning the corner. You put the pressure back on Real Madrid. You say we're not going anywhere. You're right. If we don't win this game, we're in a big spot of bother. But if we do win it, it's not only a statement win that gets fans back on the side. It gets the players thinking we've just beat a super good team, which by the way, La Real really are.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of quality, and they're a side who will hurt us big time if we're not defensively sound, which we haven't been in recent weeks. But it'll put Barcelona in a really good place. It'll be a statement win for us, and it will, of course, get us close to Real Madrid again. So we have to win the game. And that's maybe not the best place to come into. It's maybe a game you think, take the point, and that'll be a valuable point at the end of the season. We don't have that liberty right now to be able to take, unfortunately. So Barca have to win. They know they have to. You said we've got players coming back. Like Rafinha will be key. I think Lewandowski is going to be starting. Like you said, Pedri and De Jong probably off the bench. Jules Koundé could start. Massive player for Barca so far this season. So players are coming back. Squad's getting stronger. I think it's going to be a really, really good game, by the way, because La Real are a quality team as well. Actually, one of the best to watch in Spain, having a good campaign in Europe too, and the Champions League. But I've been a big fan of some of their players for years now. I think Take Kubo is a quality player, of course, from La Masia. On the right-hand side, he's really, really fun to watch. Very, very good with the ball at his feet. Mikel Merino as well is a player I'm a big fan of in midfield. Oyarzabal is now back. I think he scored 2 on the weekend, and they drew 2-2.
Zubimendi.
So Zubimendi is a quality player. You're right. I mean, the list goes on. Really quality, very comfortable with the ball at their feet. Alguacil is a quality coach. Thankfully for Barcelona, I often think the teams that play well, we do quite well against because they want to come out, they want to play their own style, and that means they leave gaps. If you leave gaps against some of the players Barcelona have, you're going to be in trouble. Often it's the teams who sit in, can counter-attack with 1 or 2 quality forwards that will hurt us more. You see it constantly. It's why we beat Real Betis 5-0 at the Camp Nou. Often. We often put 5 past Betis at the Camp Nou because they'll come out and play. They leave gaps. La Real, we beat 4-1 at Anoeta last season. So I'm hoping that happens again where they try and play. And obviously, it also means we've got to make sure that we do defend well when they attack because they're going to be attacking with so much quality. But it means they will leave us spaces down the other end. That's what I'm hoping for. So I'm aiming for a really expansive game of football. Saturday night should be a great one. I'm actually really excited for it. I want to see Barca play again. And I'm hopeful for 3 points. And of course, if we get the 3 points, it'll be a statement win. So, yeah.
Yeah, and kind of bring this one full circle as we put it to bed, that going back all the way to Gundogan's comments at the beginning, that this is a response that you want to see from this FC Barcelona, right? Like you lost El Clasico, you got a week to lick your wounds, and you're getting healthier. So this is the match. You come out and you take care of business and you go after it. And I do want to answer one quick question that I've been getting about Girona, about people. I've been talking about Girona now for a few seasons and what they're building, and of course they have the backing of the City Group and players on loan, things like that. And Alex Garcia was probably the best player in Spain in October. I mean, just terrific. And they've managed Savio and all those different storylines I've talked about with Girona. But as far as calling them title contenders, not to say that I'm looking past them, and I keep mentioning Real Madrid and I keep mentioning Atletico Madrid, but Real Sociedad and Valencia and Villarreal, like we have seen other teams in Spain been in the top 3, 2, 4 in recent seasons and for the last 10, 15, 20 years, or even historically. It's January and February. That little run there is where these teams fall off. That is where their depth kind of gets exposed. So again, I'm not disparaging Girona, but I will promise you let's pick an arbitrary date, by February the 14th, if Girona haven't won less than 5-6 points off the first place in the table, then obviously 100% I'm behind them. But there's still, when it comes to those teams who don't have the same depth as the quote unquote giants, then a long season does add up. Like 1 or 2 more injuries over the winter time, and that's why the fall is when they're most successful, and then they fall off come the spring because again 1 or 2, 3, 4 players that are important to them get injured for 2 to 3, 4 weeks at a time, and now they drop results. So Girona, the way they're playing, I believe in that. Like I believe in what I see, if that makes sense. Like they are a title contender with what is on the field, but that group on the field does not have the depth and the luxury to lose players. They have to stay healthy and continue to play at this level, which again is possible. But yeah, so that's just my one caveat on Girona, where I'm not taking anything away from what they are right now. They have been the most enjoyable team in the Liga this season, and they deserve to have 28 points and be at the top of the table. But again, the depth is the worrisome thing for any team that's not Real Madrid and usually Barcelona and Atletico Madrid over the course of the season.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you don't want to sound harsh then, but if I was for Barcelona fans, I really wouldn't be worried about Girona's results. They wouldn't be. In fact, I don't. When I see Girona, I think they won in the 94th minute on the weekend. I don't look at it and think, oh, title contenders, because it's a sad reality in a way that they're not going to be there. That's 95% certainty. The team I'm looking at are Real Madrid, and even now Atleti, who by the way are having a really strong season. I think they're growing under Simeone. Weirdly, almost a decade on, and Griezmann and Morata look so good. So I think those are the two I'm worried about. Even La Real, who we're playing on the weekend, I think they'll finish above Girona this season, by the way. So yeah, look, Girona have been superb. What a great advert as well for Catalan football and whatnot. But I don't think they're going to be up there. They're not a team, Dan, who I look at their results and I think, title rivals. Unfortunately, I just don't. I do for Real Madrid.
Yeah. Well, Pablo, where can I send all the Girona hate to you? So where are you available? what do you got going on? So yeah, I got the Girona players coming for you, or fans coming for you.
Yeah, I mean, on Twitter, I'm Pablo W. Blanco. Recently changed my name from having an official in it, which had to be done. So Pablo W. Blanco on Twitter. Obviously, I do stuff for a Cornish team here in England, Mousehole AFC, and that's where I'm on BBC Cornwall, like Dan said at the beginning. And then, of course, the place where you guys might find yourself most familiar is the Mesquiln podcast that me and John Cornforth and Bulgar Luis, who's another Barca content creator you might have heard of, and John, the undefeated moustache John, both did great stuff. We sort of good friends. We got together and did one. So come and support that. If you go on my Twitter, it'll be in my bio. And yeah, again, Dan, thanks for having me on, and thanks for allowing me to promote the podcast and whatnot, and get some good Barca chat going. That's such an important part of the season.
Well, I think your punishment for getting to advertise that, you're going to have to come back. So brilliant stuff, Pablo. Good job. So again, you can find his stuff down in the show notes and description, whether you're watching or listening. Then we're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You know where to find us, the Barcelona Pod, Patreon, close Facebook group, all that stuff. Again, the best thing to do is always give a good rating on the podcast app of choice, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, leave a like. All those things are really helpful. As I said, I want to thank everybody, and special shouts as well to Ivan for getting in contact with me about the Pele documentary sponsorship. That was really cool. And again, the reason that happens is because people, again, give good ratings and subscribe on YouTube, and just tell people that, hey, other people should be watching this stuff. And again, do the same thing with Pablo, get them kickstarted in a good way. Most importantly, though, thanks so much for listening to the show. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Forza Barca.